All right, let's dive right in. We're going on a little journey today, from the brittle, chaotic world of old school layouts to the brilliant, connected world of iOS auto layout. This is really the magic that makes modern apps look and feel so great on any device.
Oh man, come on, we've all been there, right? You spend hours, maybe even days getting every single button, every label just perfect. It looks absolutely beautiful on your iPhone simulator, and then you run it on an iPad or even just a different sized iPhone and boom, it's a complete and total disaster. It's one of the classic headaches of being an iOS developer.
So, what was the root of that problem? Well, the old way, using fixed frames, was kind of like building with superglue. We manually calculated the exact X and Y coordinates for everything. This button goes at pixel 50, 100. It was incredibly rigid. The new way, with auto layout, is all about defining relationships and rules. It's just so much more flexible right from the start. And that brings us to the hero of our story today, auto layout. Now, this isn't just some new API or a minor feature, it's a complete shift in how we think about building user interfaces. We're moving away from telling things exactly where to go, and instead we're describing how they relate to each other. So what does that actually mean, constraint-based? Well, it means you stop saying, "Hey button, you are exactly 100 pixels wide and live at coordinate 200. Instead, you start saying things like, "Hey button, your left side should always be 20 points away from the edge of the screen." You're setting up the rules of the game, and you let the system figure out the final score. This quote you're seeing, this is everything. This is the entire philosophy behind auto layout, boiled down to 5 words. You are describing your intent. My intent is for this title to be centered at the top. My intent is for this image to always be below the title. You're not a pixel pusher anymore. You're an architect of relationships. Okay, so this sounds kind of magical, right? We just describe our intentions and poof, a perfect layout appears. So how does iOS actually take our rules and turn them into a screen that looks great? Let's pull back the curtain a little bit and see how the engine actually works. It pretty much boils down to a 4-step process. First, we, the developers, define the constraints. We set all the rules. Second, the system looks at what's called the intrinsic content size. A label knows how big it needs to be to fit its text. Third, and this is the seriously cool part, iOS takes all of our rules, turns them into a big system of mathematical equations, and literally solves for every view's position and size. And then finally, it does a layout pass and draws everything where it's supposed to go. So, knowing that process, let's zoom in on the most important part for us, the building blocks, the constraints themselves. Think of these as the vocabulary we use to talk to that layout engine. Mastering these is really the key to mastering modern iOS development. The rules we can create really fall into 3 main buckets. First, you've got positioning. This is where you say things like pin this to the leading or left edge of the screen. Then you have sizing, which is pretty straightforward. This view should have a fixed width or height. And then, most powerfully, you have relative rules. This is where you say this button should always be 8 points below that label. This is how you build really complex dynamic screens that just work. Okay, so we've seen what auto layout is and a little bit about how it works under the hood. But let's get to the most important question. Why? Why do we do all this? What's the big payoff? Well, it's all about creating truly adaptive user interfaces. And here's what you get for it. You build one UI, and it's responsive on all the different iPhones and iPads. You get to completely eliminate all that fragile, hard-coded frame math from your code. Your app will automatically adapt when someone rotates their phone or changes the font size for accessibility. All of this just makes your code so much easier to maintain and to scale for whatever new devices come out next year. I want you to think about this number for a second. 0. That's how many extra lines of code you need to write for your UI to perfectly handle a device rotation or the keyboard popping up, assuming you have a good set of constraints. The system just reruns the math based on the rules you already gave it. That is an incredibly powerful concept. And let's be real, why does this matter to you right now? Because this is not some optional, nice-to-have skill. This is fundamental, core knowledge for any iOS developer today. You're going to see it in job interviews, and it is the absolute bedrock for building any modern app that you want to be robust, accessible, and ready for the future. So I'll leave you with this question. The biggest hurdle to mastering auto layout isn't learning the API, it's changing your entire mindset. So ask yourself, are you still trying to force pixels into a static grid, or have you started to think in terms of the dynamic relationships between your views? Because making that shift, that's everything.